Welcome back. Could you go ahead with your thought, please?
Yes, thank you very much. One of the most important things that we need to do in the economy today now is the issue of quantitative easing. We have, first of all, 2.2 trillion naira in deficit that we need to finance this year. And on top of that, we have a shortfall of revenues of another 50%. So while people are talking about the central bank increasing rates or not, I'm not really too concerned about that. What is important is that the central bank needs to come to the table. They need to bring their balance sheet to the table and create at least 2 trillion naira in a single interest rate bond for the Ministry of Finance. They can create that money in 24 hours. And this is what you call quantitative easing or printing money. The central bank needs to set up a quantitative easing program. We haven't seen that. And what they need to do now is to give the finance minister 2 trillion naira within the next 1 week. It's something they can do. They don't have a board, but the papers can go to the president easily. The requests can come in and they can create it on their balance sheet.
So is that going to be part of what we'll do, fund a budget?
Yes, because you need to put that 2 trillion there. The fundraising program is not fast enough. So you need to create an instrument that is cheaper because our debt service and our debt obligations are rising. So you need a single-digit bond, which will be a capex bond, specifically for capital projects, about 2 trillion, which they can give to the finance minister and let her start to execute the project. So it will be an asset on the central bank's balance sheet. It could be a 10 to 20-year bond, and the Federal Ministry of Finance will bear the liability.
How are they going to balance this spending? Because if they fund or get that fund and then they invest it in infrastructure development, that's the kind of results you should get from that will be on a long-term basis.
Yes.
What about the short-term ones?
Well, the short-term ones are done. The government is meeting their recurrent expenditure, but that's into consumption.
How will businesses feel this impact?
Well, most of the people that will feel this will be the consumer, the fast-moving consumer goods, because you're paying salaries of civil servants and they're using it to take care of their families and meet their obligations. But the critical infrastructure spend is what we need. That's why the central bank needs to set up a quantitative easing program. We need to create money and put it into projects urgently. That is really what will stem the tide, because we have a double jeopardy.
You know, when you talk about creating money, what comes to mind next is looking at the 2016 budget and saying, hey, wait a minute, we are in October of 2016. We should be talking about 2017 budget.
Yes.
No time wasted.
No, that's true. And it's important, at least from what we've seen, they are on course to be able to pass this budget by the end of the year. So what they need to do now is to quickly consolidate the shortfalls of the 2016 budget into the 2017 budget and roll it over very quickly so that we don't lose any momentum. So that by January, I think we can have a seamless transition from one budget to the next. And the ramping up of this stimulus, we want to be able to sustain the momentum.
So in all of this, how much of a looking at should we be having towards oil?
Oil will always be there. The problem we have with oil is the fact that we've lost production. Despite the price that might be what it is, we've not been able to produce at an optimal level. And that is why we have that 50% revenue shortfall. But with all the political negotiations going with the Niger Delta, hopefully by first quarter next year, we should be able to start feeling the gains of an increased production.
All right, let's bring Markwe in on this one. Markwe?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Quite a number of things you guys have touched there, but then, let's add some more to it. The current IMF meeting currently going on, which Nigeria is a part of. I think only yesterday or 2 days ago, we did hear the minister protest, the influence of, is it the climate change agreement on development, and saying that Nigeria has been prevented from using coal. But coming out of that is, what some might refer to as a parrot zero interest rates for low-income countries. What do you make of that? Because the federal government is a little reluctant. They say that there could be new conditions to be able to obtain those monies. Do you think it's something that we need to fear? That's on the one hand. On the second hand, there's also been talk of us coming out of a recession. Do you think that we're really coming out of it, especially in the face of new predictions by the IMF that we could be growing by less than 1% sometime in 2017? And then there's a third angle of the president's Independence Day speech, where he seemed to address the problem of the recession headlong, talking about some of the things that his administration is doing to ensure that we come out of a recession. Are you optimistic that some of the plans could work, especially that of agriculture and the infrastructural plans as well?
Thank you. Let me take your last question first. It's not every sector of the economy that is in recession, and I think it's something that we should understand. Certain sectors of the economy are still doing very well, like agriculture. Agriculture is still going about 4.5%, and agriculture is the largest contributor to our GDP at about 22%. So it's very important that there's still some positives in all this, and we need to attack those positives. So the whole essence of the agriculture is very important, and I think the whole essence of import substitution, a lot of things were important that we could grow here, important, but we need to begin to see tangible results in that area. So to be able to attract more investors in that area. So that's a positive. As I said also earlier, it's good that the president is beginning to talk more about the economy. And with the Senate and the forcing him to come to address them, I think it begins to put more emphasis on the economy. Thirdly, in terms of what you talked about, in terms of answering the question about the IMF, Nigeria is classified as a middle-income country, but I think what is important is that we must consider this IMF facility. And I think the reason why is that we're talking about looking for foreign exchange. I think if we really need foreign exchange, then we should go to the IMF and go for a standby facility. And I'll tell you why. Apart from the fact that the loan has a good interest rates, it's very disciplined loan. The IMF is going to insist on a lot of conditionalities. And it is those sort of discipline that we need to be able to manage that foreign exchange so that it does not go to waste. So we should consider that IMF loan to show up the effects we're looking for, and we accept the conditionalities so that we can pay it back and it doesn't go to waste. So I'm in support of an IMF facility